So let's talk about something really important if you're in South Florida. Have you ever thought about turning a house into a care facility? It's an amazing goal, right? But there's this one single legal tripwire that can turn that whole dream into a really expensive mess. We're going to break down exactly what you need to know before you even lift a hammer. All right, so you've got the property, you've got the vision to help people. That is fantastic. But hang on. Before you start knocking down walls or planning rooms, there is one critical legal term you absolutely have to understand. Because if you get this part wrong, it can completely derail your entire project. You see, the second your home's purpose changes from just a place to live to a place that provides care, it's not a simple remodel anymore. In the eyes of the law, you've just triggered what's called a change of occupancy. And believe me, this one little concept is going to dictate every single move you make from here on out. So what in the world does that actually mean? Well, a change of occupancy is an official reclassification of your property. It means your building is no longer judged by the simple rules for a house. Nope. It's now being held to the much stricter life safety codes of a commercial building. Just think of it like this. Your house isn't just a house anymore. It's basically a public facility. And, what's really interesting here is how simple the triggers are. You don't have to build some giant new wing on the house. Just simply housing unrelated people and providing supervision for them, or charging rent as part of a care program. That's it. That's enough to flip that switch with the city. And this shift, it has absolutely massive implications. The main idea you have to wrap your head around is that your home, which you've always seen as your private space, is now seen by officials as a public trust. You're now responsible for the safety of vulnerable people, and they take that very seriously. In this chart, wow, it really lays out the difference. I mean, look at this. You're going from just having basic smoke detectors to a fully monitored fire alarm system that automatically calls for help. You're going from normal hallways to needing specific, wider corridors for emergency access. And of course, the biggest jump of all, you'll almost certainly be required to install a full fire sprinkler system. The level of safety required is it's on a completely different planet. And because this is such a huge leap, people make the same predictable and very expensive mistakes. They just assume the old house rules still apply, or they hire a contractor who's never done this kind of conversion before, or, and this is a big one, they wait until the very end to even think about the fire sprinklers. Every single one of these can lead to project-killing delays and costs. And let's be really clear about why these rules exist. This isn't just about red tape or bureaucracy. As this quote reminds us, fire is especially dangerous for the most vulnerable people in our communities, the very young and the elderly, the exact people these facilities are trying to protect. So these codes, they are there to prevent an absolute tragedy. So what happens when you get this wrong? Well, the immediate result isn't just a safety risk, it's a huge financial risk. You are going to face failed inspections. The city will issue a stop work order, which halts all of your progress, and you could easily end up wasting thousands and thousands of dollars on work that has to be ripped out and completely redone. Okay, so how do you avoid that nightmare? How do you do this right? It all comes down to smart, upfront planning. By tackling the biggest hurdles first, you can create a really clear path to opening your facility safely, on time, and on budget. Let's look at the steps. Now listen to this because it's important. The most critical work happens long before the first hammer even swings. Notice that 3 of these 4 steps, they happen before construction starts. You have to confirm your zoning, hire an experienced team, not just any contractor, get your designs reviewed by the fire marshal super early, and then you figure out your utilities. It's all about planning ahead, not just building. So here's the bottom line. If sprinklers are required for your project, they instantly become the project's critical path. The timeline for designing, permitting, and installing that sprinkler system, it's going to dictate the timeline for everything else. It has to be your #1 priority, not an afterthought. All right, so you've done all the planning. Good job. Now, what does the actual installation of a fire sprinkler system look like in a home that's already built? Well, it's probably a lot less disruptive than you're imagining. First things first, the process actually starts outside the house. A specialized crew comes in and they tap into the city's water main. Then they run a dedicated underground pipe just for the sprinkler system to your home. This makes sure the system has all the pressure and flow it needs to work perfectly when it matters most. Once they're inside, installers are basically masters of concealment. They're really clever about how they run the pipes, usually through the attic or tucked away inside closets, to minimize having to open up your walls and ceilings. The whole goal is to preserve the look and feel of the home. And hey, you can forget about those big, clunky, industrial-looking sprinkler heads you might be picturing. Today's residential systems use these modern, recessed heads that are almost invisible. All you see is a simple, flat little cap that sits totally flush with the ceiling. It just blends right in. You'd probably never even notice it's there. And finally, two really crucial things happen. The whole system is filled with water and then pressure tested to make absolutely sure there are zero leaks. Then, the fire inspector comes and does a meticulous review of the entire installation. And I mean, this is not a quick look-see. They check everything. Only after they sign off is your system officially ready to protect your residents. So after all that planning and all that work, what's the payoff? Well, it's so much more than just a piece of paper from the city. It's about a fundamental shift in safety and a massive reduction in your risk. I want you to think about this number for a second. When a fire starts, a single sprinkler head right above it activates, and it releases about 25 gallons of water per minute. It's a really targeted, precise spray that's designed to control or even put out a fire when it's small and at its absolute weakest. Now, let's compare that to a single firefighter's hose. That hose pumps out 250 gallons of water per minute. That is 10 times as much water, and that's because it's needed to fight a fire that has already grown way, way out of control. And here's what that difference really looks like. On the left, with a sprinkler, you have an incident. A fire is contained to one room, you've got some cleanup to do, but you recover, and you recover quickly. On the right, without a sprinkler, you have a catastrophe. The entire home is filled with searing heat and choking smoke. You're looking at massive water and structural damage, and maybe even a total loss of your investment. And more importantly, your ability to provide care. You know, this quote really just says it all, doesn't it? A fire sprinkler system isn't just a bunch of pipes. It is a silent guardian, always watching, always ready. It's the promise of immediate action, giving constant protection for the people you've dedicated yourself to caring for. Look, converting a home for care is about so much more than construction. It's about creating a true sanctuary. The rules and regulations might seem like a lot, but they all serve one simple purpose: keeping people safe. Which really brings us to the final question. It's not about the cost of the system, but the value of it. When you're protecting vulnerable lives, what is that peace of mind really worth?